That's where the best stuff happens, is when I'm making fun of you offline. So I was literally just making fun of Luke's last post of his hanging, were they hanging leg raises where your abs look ridiculous, but if they
No, they're
actually
not.
used a filter.
Those are not hanging leg raises.
What are
Those
they?
are oblique crunches or oblique crunches. I don't know what I'm going to call them. I have a real problem like naming stuff after myself, but it's basic because you're not actually lifting your legs, you're rotating your hips. So for me, when I hurt my back, I actually was playing around with stuff and I go, okay, what can I do to create more flexion in my spine? And I was getting bored with just like hollow holds and, reverse crunches and things like that. And I said, how do I, if you think about doing like hanging leg raise, how do you regress that? Okay, you go on the ground and you do gar hammers or whatever on a bench, and then you get to the hanging. I went, okay, so what about just hip rotation? If I just want to work abs and obliques and create more hip rotation, how do I do that? And I was like, well, shit, I guess I could put a bar in a rack and then put a bar pad on and just use that as a fulcrum so that I could just concentrate on rolling my hips up and getting that active in posterior rotation. And I'm like, fuck, that worked really well. And then I go, what do I name it? I go, man, I can't name it after myself because everybody's doing that. And I call it hanging oblique rotation or hanging oblique
Name it
crunch.
after me. I haven't named anything after me.
I did actually name an exercise after one of my clients. That was a cool one.
Yeah, but not me. You said I'm a dream client. I'm sorry, your wife said I'm a dream client. You would know.
Well, the thing is, I haven't had to invent an exercise for you yet, but I will.
You gave me the Leaman step up, though. I liked that.
Step up, yeah. And I did not name that. I just want to be really clear. One of my students did, and I was like, "That's fine. You want to call it that? That's fine." But I didn't name it.
but the point of that is if you had a little bit of a filter of somewhat of a tan, it would look astonishing.
I have no tan. I've actually put a filter on this now so you wouldn't make fun of me, but now I look like fucking Willy Wonka in the chocolate factory, Oompa Loompa shit. But
oh god, well, because you guys just got through rainy season, so you haven't been outside.
That, and you know what? Because of the high rates of cancer here, because the UV index is so high, and at least in Queensland, you can't go to a tanning salon. They're illegal, like a traditional solarium. You can own a tanning bed, but you can't do it commercially. And it's crazy fines like this. I just read a thing a couple of weeks ago. These guys got caught. They were in a warehouse and they had like 3 tanning beds, and they got caught. And it was something like a $1.5 million fine. It's like $500,000 fine for each unit that you have. Like, it's nuts.
Dude,
craziness.
That's like getting arrested for like happy endings, but you own like a tanning salon. But
that's totally legal here.
Of course,
completely legal. Brothels are legal. Like, you can go get a Thai massage and get a rub and tug after it. Completely legal, but you can't get in a tanning bed. But you can go out you can go outside in the sun with uncontrolled, brutal UV radiation, but you can't do it in a controlled environment because of melanoma.
File under everything that makes zero sense in Australia.
Yeah. Well, and then they make it worse too, because when I tell clients when they go get their labs done, I'm like, look, I want you to put vitamin D on here and then some other things for vitamin D conversion. The doctors won't do it because they already know that everyone's so deficient in vitamin D here that they don't even test it. But then they don't allow you to really buy it either. Like, you can only buy 1,000 IU vitamin D. So it's a crazy nanny state stuff that we deal with over here. But
I think Australia like has conversations with Canada as who can be more ridiculous in their supplement restrictions.
Yeah.
Because
or even like melatonin. Melatonin's now over the counter. That used to be prescription. You can get homeopathic melatonin. It doesn't do anything. But if you want actual melatonin, you can get it over the counter now, but only if you're above the age of 55, because apparently only they need it. So if I wanted to go get melatonin, I'd have to go to the doctor. And because I'm not a citizen, I have to pay $70 to see the doctor. And then I have to buy a $60 bottle of 2 milligram 30 tab melatonin. And so I have to just order it from the States and hope it clears customs.
So if you're 54, there's no chance.
No chance. So you got to you got to go to the grocery store and say, hey, excuse me. Hey, can I give you a $5 to go in there and get me some melatonin? Like, it's like real shady.
Next time I have to take out a loan to FedEx you guys a package, I'll try to include some melatonin. The fees to literally FedEx across the world, it's like crazy.
Yeah.
But I mean, it balances out because then you have Cinnamon Toast Crunch for at least a year.
Oh man, that was so good. I inhaled all of that too. All of it.
So how about we talk about like this photo shoot thing I did?
Yeah.
That,
yeah.
you know, we planned, so we originally planned it like, cause you got me so shredded for my wedding. And then we're like, let's do a shoot. And then just like the wedding, we moved that 3 times and it became like this never ending prep, but it was enjoyable and you did it the right way. So for context, kind of talk about what, you know, it's been like taking me through this whole journey for the past, I mean, I've been with you guys 4 years now.
Yeah.
So my crazy and everything. I gave Luke full, you know, disclosure rights to everything about me. So you guys know that I'm fully transparent.
Easy.
So
yeah, easy. Well, yeah. I mean, how do we start this? So we'll start with your old nickname. I can't call you that anymore, which was Crazy Ali. That's what we called you first, because like when you first came on, and I just want to be clear, this story that we're about to tell is the most common story I see training people, especially women. And I used to think it was going to get better. It's going to get better. It's not. Like women are still crazy when it comes to this stuff. And it's, if we go way back, even before I started training you, when I got in the industry, it was like super taboo for women to actually be in the gym. Like it was all dudes. It was a bros club. You might have 1 or 2 women that the weird freaky bodybuilders that would come in, you know, but it wasn't like it is now where, you know, you've got mass amounts of women that actually want to get strong. Like women want to lift heavy. They want to lift hard. They want to grow muscle. It's now become accepted, thank God, for women to actually put on muscle and pursue strength and hypertrophy. But it wasn't always that way. And I mean, you got to think this is only 20 years ago when I started, a little over 20 years ago that I started personal training. And then even before that, you know, I've been in gyms since I was 8 years old and you never saw any women in there. So it's changed a lot, but then you've gone through this whole thing of, you know, there's still this stigma for women and there's this still kind of psychological issue too, because they want to put on muscle, but they don't want to put on weight to do that. It's like, okay, if you eat and lift to grow, you're going to have to accept the scale going up. And that was the first battle for you. Is I think you were eating something like 1,100 calories when we first started, and your output was really high. And so it's like, okay, you want to look like Dana Lynn Bailey, you're going to have to put on a significant amount of muscle mass. And this is going to take a long time. And you're going to have to be okay with the scale going up. So I still remember, I don't do a lot of reverse dieting. I only do reverse dieting if someone has that kind of psychological thing where they see the scale jump up, you know, a pound and they freak out, right? I would rather just take them straight up the maintenance and just rip the Band-Aid off and get it over with. But with some people, you can't do that because they've been eating so low for so long that the minute they, let's say, I think the first thing I did was take you up to like 2,100 calories or something.
2,400, I think.
400. You start freaking out.
I can't remember. Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, we'll do it slowly. So let's just go to 1,800. So went to 1,800. You put on like 1.5 kilos. You freaked out. I was like, okay, let's go back to 1,100. And then we went back up to 1,800. You freaked out, went back to 11. So this process went on for a long time until you finally got okay with now bringing that up a bit when you start putting on muscle. But that's kind of the mind fuck that this can be, because women have such a psychological attachment to the scale, and the scale doesn't matter. It does in certain situations, but it's only one metric to look at. There's a lot of other metrics you have to look at in order to put on muscle and put on strength. But a lot of women are really hesitant to do that.
The best thing you had me do is change it to kilos, because I still don't know the fucking math. Like, I'm like, whatever. Like,
yeah, man, that's it. It's such a weird thing. I remember I was like, how do I scramble her brains so she stops freaking out about a pound?
Yeah.
Well, if we turn it to, if I tell her to turn her scale into kilos, she's not going to understand what that means. You're not going to pull out a fucking calculator abacus. You're going to pull out your TI 85 Texas Instruments calculator and start trying to figure out how many pounds 500 grams are. But if you think about it, if you gain 400 or 500 grams, you're like, oh, grams, that's a really small number. Well, that's a fucking pound.
Yeah.
So psychologically, it's easier to put on 400 or 500 grams than it is to put on a pound. And I don't know why that is, but it worked really well. Really well.
And then looking back, I'm like, it's like so embarrassing to think like, oh my God. Cause if I have clients and I have men who freak out like that, and I'm just like, yo, like you gained like 2 pounds, and I start laughing and I explain how I was that way. And I'm like, oh my God, thank you for not kicking me out. Cause it's like mortified to be like, oh my God, that was me. Like if I knew then what I've learned through your courses that I know now, and it's like, holy shit. It's like, it's so crazy that people are like, so wait, if you diet on low calories, and we can say like when we wanted to get low, there were times you had me at 1100. However, I did not live at 1100. Before, right. I was living at 1100 and couldn't drop weight. Whereas now, if we drop to 1100, I'm able to lose it. So it's like, oh my God, the psychology behind it. But
yeah, and there's a time and place for going low.
Yeah,
but you have to be in a position of leverage to go low. So
which I wasn't.
You have to get to a point where you're eating at a sufficient level. And that way, when we pull calories out or add a little bit more activity, now it creates a deficit. If your maintenance is that low, you're tired all the time, you're not training well, your performance sucks. You go out, you go for a run, you go do your endurance stuff, and you're like, man, this sucks. I'm not sleeping well. That stuff needs to be corrected first, which means we have to get your calories to a sufficient level and try to get it close to what we would focus on as like theoretical maintenance, and see how close we can get there. Maybe even get there and put on some weight and then pull it back down, go back up, put some weight on, pull it back down. And eventually get to a point where you can eat 1,800, 2,000, 2,200 calories, and you just consistently recomp. And then if we have an event or we have something, or you start feeling fluffy or a little bit watery or heavy, cool. We can just go down for a few weeks, get rid of that, and go back up.
Side note, do you remember 20 years ago when, like, I think it was Gold's or Powerhouse, they had the women's room? Like, women only.
A lot of them still do.
They still have that.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that. It was like the adduct, the bad girl, good girl machine.
Yeah.
And then like the pink weights, and then like select machines that, God forbid you do them in front of any dudes, but
they'd have like dumbbells up to maybe 5 or 6 pounds, tiny little room off in the corner. Men weren't allowed to go in there. Yeah, adduction machine. They had what was it? The toner. You remember the toner thing? The little spring you put in your legs and move your knees back and forth. Those are actually pretty good.
Yeah, I forget the Thigh Master.
Thigh Master.
Yes, Thigh Master. And then the glass going into that room was like fogged, so you couldn't see in. It's like, can you imagine that nowadays, like as a thing?
I had a buddy that called me. He goes, hey man, I found one of those old Thigh Masters. I think his mom had it or something. So what he would do is he would use that to warm up his adductors before he squatted. He said, man, my squats feel fantastic after a few rounds of this. So now I'm going to look for a Thigh Master.
Oh, I bet we could find one on Amazon or something. Probably for like $400 or some shit.
Probably.
But
vintage.
Yeah, vintage. So getting ADD. So we're going to have a lot of tangents today. But so anyway, you brought me through like the wedding prep, and finally I got used to the fact that I can gain and lose weight, which is probably one of the hardest things to convince clients to do, right?
Yeah, 100% it is. And then you go through this process of, okay, we're trying to make a recomp. We need to put some muscle on. We need to put some strength on, and then pull it down. And then when you get down, you can't get comfortable being that lean, because you're not always going to be that lean. Because you got to remember, you have to go back up if you want to keep improving.
Right.
And that's kind of where you were at, like post-wedding, and a little bit of that now too, where it's like, I get these messages on True Coach. Oh, I'm feeling really fluffy. And like, you're supposed to feel fluffy. You can't sit at 14, 15% body fat year round. It ain't going to happen. No. We can sit at like 18 to 20 is fine. But once you anybody who's gotten really lean, where they've got some veins on their abs, and you might even have a couple striations in your glutes. If you get even further than that, anything above that is now fat to you, and it's a weird psychological thing, and that goes through everybody. But it takes a long time to get over that. I actually just had that recently, where I had to have a coming to Jesus talk with myself, because from January 1st to my birthday, I dropped I was 95 kilos. I dropped from about close to 17% to around, I don't know, 10%. I was 8.8 on a DEXA. So like probably around 10% for me. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to take 3 or 4 weeks off and just kind of not track as much and just have some stuff that I normally wouldn't have. And I've been working really hard, sitting at my desk, which is probably also why I'm super white. I haven't seen the sunlight much. But I started getting a little bit softer. My weight's not changing, but it's looking softer. And I'm like, oh, shit. And then I have to sit here and go, okay, what would I tell Ali? Okay, this is
That's
only
awesome.
been 3 weeks. All I need to do is clean it up for a few days. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, cool. There's my obliques again. There's my veins. Okay. It's, but you can't just sit there and forever diet. Like that's never going to happen.
But we were basically like in a competition, because you're leading out at the same time I'm leading out. And so we were driving our significant others crazy over our fascination with how many veins. So then it became, well, we'll just talk to each other about it. And then look at my abs today. Look at my abs today. And I'm like, this mofo is going to try to like out lean me when I'm trying to make it do a damn photo shoot. But the cool thing was, like, you kept a journal of everything you were doing in the Muscle Nerds group, which I think a lot of people really found fascinating, because they all want to know like what you do. And it can be like, this doesn't have to be just talking about me. Like, this can be talking about what you do also to get as lean as you do, because obviously people think that you walk around dick skin lean year round as well. And as you said, it's really not possible. So we like to think that we do, but people think that we don't take a break from dieting. Like, people think I've been dieting since the wedding. They didn't realize that I took a diet break. Can you please tell the world I actually you had me do that?
Always diet breaks. Yeah, no, like all that, those 4 years was kind of taking crazy Ali, putting her in a box, putting her in the back of the closet, and then being okay with going up to 64 kilos. That was kind of the biggest milestone, is getting you to the point where you were hitting 63, 64 kilos of body weight. And you're like, I'm actually okay with this.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, I'm deadlifting 3 plates. All right, this is kind of cool, and I'm repping out pull-ups and doing archer pull-ups and doing all this wild shit that most women can't do, and lots of weighted pull-ups and things. I think we got carried away with that because your back got real fucking wide. So we're gonna start working on the mid back now. But so it was that was a big milestone, getting you to that point, and then saying, okay, where do we need to go from here? Fuck, we don't know. Like, let's just start chipping it away. And what's funny is you chipping it down to like, I think we got down to like 59 something. And then we started lifting more. We cut all the conditioning out, just lifted more. And all of a sudden your weight starts going back the other way. And you got up to like 61.5. And you're like, what's going on? It's supposed to be going down. I'm like, no, but you're looking better. The weight doesn't matter. You look better. Don't worry about the weight so much.
The biggest thing I think too, like, cause my friend Ed McKay, who I also make fun of for being extremely pale, probably translucent compared to you. He was like, dude, you're like keeping your shape. And I was like, I know, like, I think that's why I was okay. Because in the past, when I would get soft or feel soft, I felt I looked like that. And this time I felt like I looked like I lifted. So what do you think that is a testament to?
Well, I think there's just had a
Eating?
thought. Well, yeah, part of it, eating for performance. We tried to get rid of as much of the fake foods, because you love your ghost bars and your drinks and all that. So a lot of it's getting rid of, not that artificial sweeteners are bad, but at the amount you were taking, there's some possible gut issues and there's possible neurotransmitter issues, things like that. So getting rid of that and leaning on more unprocessed foods. I think part of it was you moving to Florida, where you could actually have sunlight for more than 4 weeks a year and nice weather. There was that. And then, we got to a point where it's like, look, you're conditioned enough. We don't need to do any more cardio. you're going out and your conditioning is back like you were when you were a soccer athlete. So we might as well just pull all that and we'll just lean on the weightlifting. I think that's a big mistake a lot of people make too, is they lead. Conditioning is important for a couple of reasons. Number one, you need to get in shape to be able to train hard in the gym and recover hard. You need to keep your blood pressure regulated, your heart rate regulated, HRV regulated. But then once all that's good, we don't need to flog that horse anymore. You need to take all of that effort. Let's put it to the lifting instead. And then we can always bring the conditioning back in if we're at a level where the calories are low and we don't feel comfortable taking any more calories out. And now we need to create a caloric funnel. But a lot of people leave the conditioning in too long and they end up just looking stringy and gross. And they're leveraging that instead of leveraging a caloric deficit and lots of rest and sleep. So I think a lot of the stuff, it's a lot of the way you design programs too. You got to look at what's the end goal, where are we beginning, what are the gaps I need to fill in to then compound all that. It's like compounding interest, and it's like having stocks. You buy 25 different stocks. Some stocks don't work. The majority of them do. Great, your portfolio goes up. It's the same type of thing, right? But I try to relate. I try to relate everything. We try to take sciencey shit and turn it into an analogy or turn it into a metaphor or story or something like that. And I like looking at things like even like a high performance car. If I'm going to take a car and make it faster, it's not as simple as just putting fast stuff on it, because it has to take that speed. It has to take that horsepower and put it to the ground. So you got to think about the tires. You got to think about the drive shaft. You have to think about the transmission. You have to talk about air coming in, fuel coming in. There's a lot of engine management. All that stuff has to be thought about before you start building a really fast car. So it's the same thing when you look at physique. There's things that need to be taken care of first to get you ready to go on the journey. And then you have to figure out when do we put the parts on, and when do we need to upgrade parts or remove parts. And that's kind of how I build stuff over time. But it takes a lot of long-term foresight and planning.
I think it's a good sidetrack because towards the end of, we'll call it prep, towards the end of the prep for this shoot, I talked about how I think the only cardio you had me doing was really steps. And it wasn't even like a step goal. It was just maintaining some steps. And I would try to continually explain how you front loaded a lot of my aerobic work before. So I think it's a good, time still to just keep repeating this, because no matter how many times you talk about it, people still, they're like, oh my God, that's the first time they've heard that, because they're still used to people. I'm 4 weeks out. I have 3 hours of cardio a day type of mentality. So if you can kind of go into that explanation, why do you do the aerobic long stuff first and then taper it towards the end?
Yeah. So you have to look at it first and foremost. All the activity you're doing to elicit some type of adaptation. So if you want a specific adaptation, you have to give it a specific stimulus. So we shouldn't, people, you'll see this a lot online. People go, never use your activity to burn calories. Why not? That's not the only reason you should use it, but so that it's kind of a half truth, right? Mm-hmm. There's nothing inherently wrong with using exercise to create a caloric deficit. It's not as efficient as pulling calories, but at some point, if you want to get to an unhealthy level of leanness, and that's what it is, right? If you just want to lose fat, they're right. But if you want to get to an unhealthy level of leanness, which is most photo shoot and on stage stuff, you're going to have to use tools in an unhealthy manner. So what we use the tools for initially is to get in shape, better work capacity, get your blood pressure regulated, get your heart rate regulated, make your sleep better, all of that type of thing. So same thing you would do with the weightlifting. If I want to lift weights, if I want to build muscle, it doesn't really matter what rep range you use, as long as you go close to technical failure. Mm-hmm. Now, some rep ranges are probably much better than others, especially if you look at the rep ranges to the extremes. They are biased towards something in an extreme manner. So bodybuilders have had this figured out for fucking 100 years. The best rep ranges for muscle growth tend to be somewhere between like 8 to 12. And now with the evidence-based guys will say, well, it doesn't really matter. Somewhere between say 6 and 20 And I would agree with that, right? It opens up a lot of different methods, and it opens up a lot of stuff for different body types and different. When you look at body types, how long are my levers? What am I suited for? Somebody with really, like, you got somebody that's built like a grasshopper. They're not going to be built for powerlifting. They got really long limbs. They're probably never going to make a good power lifter. So you start thinking about, they probably don't need anything under 6 reps because they're not built to produce strength anyways. And they have to produce way more torque at joints to move that load than somebody with more optimal levers for this. So it's like, okay, here's my client. They want to change their physique, sets of 5 or below, heavy eccentrics, probably not in their wheelhouse, but, sets of 8 to 20 probably are. If somebody's built a different way, okay, then the lower reps might work better, but you're always biased at the extreme. So pretty much everything has a continuum and a bell curve. So your best results are probably going to be somewhere in 70% of the inside of that bell curve, which means probably 8 to 20 reps, maybe for some people 6 to 20. And then if you bias it towards that 15% over here where it's under 6 reps, yeah, you're still going to grow muscle. It's probably not going to be as fast as just pump work, but you're going to get a lot stronger there than you would in, say, an 8 to 12 rep range. And if you go to the other extreme, you're going to build a lot more strength endurance. You're going to still build hypertrophy, but you're probably not going to get that strong. Right. So we have to figure out where's the best return on your investment for what you're looking for. And if it's for physique, most of your work is going to be in the middle of that bell curve, and then occasionally maybe popping in and out of these places. Same thing with the conditioning. Most people have a horrible aerobic conditioning. And so we have to look at its bell curve. Alactic work, probably not that beneficial. Glycolytic lactic work, probably more beneficial. But if you want to bias it towards aerobic, you got to do aerobic-y type things, which means you got to either do steady state cardio or aerobic style intervals or glycolytic work with incomplete rest. There's a way to modify these things, but you need to get a clear defined perspective of what is the end adaptation I need for this phase, for this mesocycle, for this period of my training, and I need to bias my training towards that one goal until I hit that adaptation, and then I have to reassess. Right. So, for example, got a guy. He's a footy player. He plays AFL, and his aerobic engine is really good because he's done a lot of aerobic work. But now, when he goes and plays footy, he's good for the first half of the game and then he crumbles. Well, he needs to get more anaerobic output because the starting and the stopping and the buffering lactate or buffering hydrogen and all this other stuff that he needs, those systems are crumbling because he's moved too far off to one side. So we got to bring it back. So everything has to be assessed, and then you have to choose the right tool for the job. Not saying that other tools won't work, but some are going to work better at certain times.
Did you have him do the dreaded Cooper's test? Modified?
I actually didn't need to because I already knew. So sometimes you don't need to assess because you already kind of know. So with him, I had a good idea of what his resting heart rate was, and it was fairly low. You get a guy's resting heart rate's fairly low. He's been doing a lot of aerobic work, 26, 27 years of age. You already have a pretty good idea. The guy can go and run forever, but then you find out that he's not doing well when he plays and he's putting in deceleration and change of direction and starting and stopping. It's like, okay, now we need to work on the anaerobic stuff. So now he's doing more of that stuff. But, from the physique perspective, physique periodization is pretty simple. The main thing is we need to eliminate weak body parts. And then we have to go through stages of building muscle, pulling off fat, building muscle, pulling off fat. So it is, I view it as similar to what I use with a high level athlete. It's just a different type of perspective on what is important, what's not important. Not important for a bodybuilder to be able to hammer out 200 kilograms single rep squats, right. But being really good at mind muscle connection, feeling the muscle, prioritizing body parts that might be behind, limiting work on muscles that are already overly big. It's more of a science and art thing than it is with high level athletes.
And so when you have people who come to you for physique goals and they need the aerobic work in the beginning and they're doing that, do you ever think that they're like, oh, so yeah, I was right. You do have to do cardio to get to where I need to be, because that's what they're starting with. They don't really know that they're not going to be doing more of that going into the end of that phase. Do you ever
I think
find that?
a lot of it's education. If you just educate
Yeah.
the client and get them to understand, they're either going to understand or they're not. And if they don't understand, I'm not going to train them, because if you have something that has a time, beginning and end, and it's for something like bodybuilding or photo shoot, there's not a lot of time for me to argue with people.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people come, like we had a long time with you and you were kind of cruisy about what you wanted to do. And then COVID pushed the wedding back a little bit. And I was like, all right, well, we got plenty of time now. So a lot of times people come to me because they fucked up and they're like, I've got 8 weeks left. I'm like, okay, I don't have a lot of time to dick around. Like, you're going to do what daddy says or go to someone else, because I'm going to try to educate you as much as possible. We don't have a lot of time for me to fuck around with arguing with you about this type of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's why I think we work well together, because now I hear you like in my head where sometimes I'll do a set and I'm like, fuck, I could go like 20 pounds heavier, and I'll do like 6 sets because there's only 5 that you want me to do. But I'm like, I can't mark that down because he's going to see that it's 20 pounds less. And that, like, you get that mindset where you're in the gym, because when you're training, like we've discussed, sometimes people don't train hard enough, but you have to get to that point where you're like, okay, I am dying. I think 3 phases ago, we were doing sets of 2 minutes. It was like basically like 2020 for 2 minutes straight, leg press or squat or something. And I was like, this is the worst torture. And I have an app that was timing me. And I'm just like, when is it the last 10 seconds? And like, I think about like, if I did this to some of my clients, I know they would be like 15 seconds in and they would just stop because it gets hard.
Yeah.
But you have to be like, if that's what your goal is, then you have to be effective and truthful in your coaching and stuff. So you
100%.
have to educate people so that you're not having those arguments and stuff.
Because what you'll find is people either they'll stop early when they feel some discomfort, or they just won't load it up. If you do a 2-minute leg press and you can get up and walk off the machine, you're like smiling and shit, okay, you need to load that heavier. And that's what you'll see a lot of people. And the thing is, if you do a set and if I tell you that this should suck real bad and it should burn real bad, and you're going to be cussing at me and it's going to take you a few minutes to get off the machine. If that was easy, then that was a warm-up set. You need to add another set. And it's not like you don't have to wreck yourself, but you have to push yourself. If you want to push your body to a different state, you have to train harder than what you think you need to do.
Yeah.
But there is a point of going too hard that you got to dial it back. So it should suck, but it shouldn't. These videos you see bodybuilders online where they're screaming at each other and they're like crying and they're falling. You don't have to train that hard to build muscle, but you do have to train hard, or your body doesn't have a reason to respond. You have to put your body in a position where it feels like it's in danger to then evoke that adaptive response. And oh man, this is why I don't train that many physique competitors anymore anyways, especially the women, because they'll go in and I'll give them 5 sets of say 10 to 12. And they'll do like 40 for 12, 50 for 12, 60 for 12, 70 for 12, 80 for 12, 90 for 12. And I go, cool, you did 3 or 4 warm-up sets and actual 2 good work sets. And the way I've designed this is you need 5 good work sets. Yeah. So you need to count that 40, 50, 60, 70 as being warm-ups. Your 80 and 90 were your work sets. You need 3 more sets. And they always go, I don't understand why my body's not changing, because you're lifting like a pussy. Like, you need to when it starts to suck, that's your first work set.
Yes. And that's probably the hardest thing to teach online, because you get a pretty good idea how you can talk to a client. And like, I'll go at some of my guys. I'm like, bro, I warm up with what you're lifting right now. Like, I know you can go heavier than 20 pounds for lunges. Like, I know you can do more than this. And it's very hard because say you get a rep range, 10 to 12, they will just work within that range. So if they can go beyond 12, they'll stop because it says 12. And you're like, okay, but if you can go beyond that, just go beyond that and then just go heavier, your next set. But I think they feel very, boxed in to that 10 to 12. But if you get 9, like that's good. It's okay. Like you're going heavy, struggle is the good thing.
I would rather someone fail in good form and technique and not hit the rep range than to hit the end of the rep range and stop, because you just you pretty much wasted your set. And there's the whole point of having a rep range, and that's the reason why I don't give someone like 5 sets of 10. The whole point is to load it set of 10 to 12 until you barely get a 10th one out. And then, okay, now I know, let's say that's 100 kilos. Now I know that I need to work with somewhere around like 90 to 100. Somewhere in that area is pretty good. And then when I can turn that into sets of 12, then I can add more weight. I can add 4 or 5% more and see where I hit in the rep range. You see it all the time. They'll hit 10 to 12 rep range. They'll hit 12 and they'll stop. And it's like your 12th rep look like your first rep. If that's the case, you have almost no stimulatory reps. Maybe you got 1 in there, but you should, on the last 2 to 3 reps, the bar should be slowing down. Let's say you've got a 3010 and it's like the first 10 reps, you hit 1 second concentric or even faster. Some people will lift faster, even though I tell them to lift a little bit slower. But that 11th rep should be like 1.5 seconds. That 12th rep should be around 2 seconds. And once you're there, as long as the technique isn't breaking down too much, you probably have a good 2 to 3 more reps until that bar is moving at like 3 or 4 seconds and you're grinding it out. And the lift now starts to not look like the same exercise. That's where you're hitting like the limit. You probably don't need to go that far, because once technique breaks down, it becomes a different lift. It's no longer, if you're squatting and on 1 rep, you get halfway up and you start to flex your spine, twist and hip shift, it's no longer a squat. You're done. You have found a really good amount of weight. Stop just short of that really junky, shady rep. And you're going to be good, because you just need to hit a good, 3 good stimulatory reps over 3 to 5 sets. And you're probably all right with that.
Or just you guys listening, just give 2 minutes on a leg press a try. See, I think I remember I said, if you listen to the audio, it sounds like either someone's dying or like that Adam Sandler. It was like an MP3 where he's like, is this sex or is this someone working out? Because they're like, because that shit hurt. And I think one time I was like, I lost count after every set, but I think it ended up being like 50 to 60 reps. And then I was like, I just can't count, because you have to go to that dark place. You really have to go to that dark place sometimes. And I think it's important for people to learn that. And I love the analogy that you use, where if you tell somebody, 12 to 15, but that they can go more, tell them to just go to failure, and they end up going to like 50. And it's like, come on.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, and that's why I only will use things like RP skills and reps and reserve with really advanced athletes or clients. Right. And the reason is because people always underestimate what they can do. So what I'll tell people is, I want you to lift until the bar slows down significantly, and you can feel that 1 rep is getting really different than the other reps. That's your last rep, because the next rep is the one you're probably going to get hurt on if you get hurt. And you're starting to create these weird compensations because you've got technical failure. So if you can work to 1 concentrically technical deviated rep, like it's starting to get weird, starting to become a different exercise, that we're good. We don't need to go any further than that. And most people don't even need to go to that, but they should go to that so they can actually see, okay, at what rep with 100 kilos does this not feel the same? And where I'm really starting to struggle. And that's like, okay, now I know that maybe 90 to 95 is my weight. And I need to work with that until I can turn my technical shitty rep into 105. Then I can work with 95 to 100.
Telling you, training is like what?
Well, I was going to say, one of the problems with that too is that coaches, a lot of times coaches they change too many exercises in a program, too much. Like they'll use like in 12 months, they'll use like 15 different types of squats. squats, and you never really get good at one. So it's like, okay, if you're going to change the squat, that's fine, but let's just change a small little detail, because the body's real simple. It's like when you're doing a squat, you sit down, you stand up. I mean, it's obviously more technical than that, but if you're constantly changing from like a quad squat to a cyclist squat to a wide stance squat to a heels elevated squat to a box squat to a low bar squat, high bar squat, over, you're changing all these things, you never really get good at that. I think a lot of coaches are scared to keep the same fucking exercise in because they think their clients don't know what they're doing. But the fact is, if you're constantly changing all these exercises, you're constantly having to relearn what weight you're supposed to use at that rep range. And you're better off just doing a basic triple flexion, triple extension, or you get triple flexion, hinge, knee flexion, single leg. You're better off doing that repeatedly for 12 months straight and maybe just moving the rep ranges around a little bit than you are using 12 different fucking squats in a year.
I totally agree. And I think it's important for people to hear that who are clients, because sometimes they'll either get bored, which I don't understand, because if you're progressively, adding weight, challenging yourself, and then going up, like that's exciting. So then that could mean, hey, confront the fact that you may not be training as hard as you think you are, because if you're getting bored, obviously something's not challenging anymore. And then sometimes like the people that do ask if the exercises are going to change are the clients who are coaches. And I'm like, but they don't need
100%.
Yeah. You guys don't, that.
I remember years ago, and this is back in like, oh my God, it had to be like 2007 or 8 when I first started doing online training, like way back in the day.
The OG.
The OG. Like I had a guy, and he's a high level guy. He's a really high level guy now. And I remember I had him doing the same back squat for four programs in a row. So it had been like 4 or 5 months of back squatting. And he goes, hey man, I don't think this is going to work out. Why not? He goes, you haven't changed my squat in like 4 or 5 months. And I go, okay. He goes, yeah, aren't we supposed to change like angles and all this? I go, but your squat, your squat keeps getting better and you keep putting more weight on it. Why the fuck would we change this out when it's working? Like that doesn't make any sense.
Yes.
Makes no sense. Are you working? Do you want to be entertained, or do you want to get jacked?
Yeah. So
but you're right. It is the coaches. It is. Yeah. And I'm part to blame for what I used to teach, over a decade ago, is we told people that you always got to change your stance or change this. You don't. You need a low repetition of efforts. If strength is a skill, if you want to get good at this, you have to find the lifts that work with your body and hammer those, especially for physique, because it's specific to a goal of changing your body. Get really good at this one movement. And it's like, okay, this squat actually works perfect for your body type and the way you're built and your orthopedic profile. Why would we deviate from that? Like we can change a lot of different loading parameters. We can do rest pause. We can add long eccentrics with weight release. We can do a lot of cool stuff with that same movement and not even change it for 4 years. I mean, go look at Olympic weightlifters. What are they? Front squat, back squat, snatch, clean, and they've got accessory work. But if you've ever competed in or at least trained for a significant period of time with Olympic lifting, you are going to do a lot of snatches, a lot of cleans. And yeah, you might do them from different positions. Yeah, but there is massively technical different things from a full snatch than like a snatch from hanger blocks, but it's all the same. It's all the same exercise, just done from different positions. There's no reason to get really fancy and start adding a Bosu ball under each foot while you're snatching, or adding chains to the bar while you're snatching, which would be fucking retarded anyways. But there's no reason to change basic foundational shit if that's what's working. But a lot of people, I'm of that opinion that you are. Like, if you're getting bored with your training, your priorities and your perception is skewed not on your goal and the results, but on having fun in your training. And that's okay. But there's no reason to, if you either want to be entertained or you want to fucking get excellence. And sometimes getting excellence in anything is a real fucking boring, tedious fucking process. You want to build a business, it's the same repetitive shit done every day, foundational business stuff every fucking day, for a long fucking time. If you want to build your body, it's the same repetitive bullshit for a very long fucking time, which is why you don't see that many awesome physiques, because they just get bored and they want to be entertained. They don't want to fucking put in the work.
Well, people will comment and they'll be like, "Oh my God, you're back, Ali." And I'm like, okay, so you see me post pull-up videos like almost every day because you had me doing pull-ups in every single phase. Granted, sometimes it was different variations, but it's like, how could I get bored when I have loaded pull-ups? I have eccentrics. I've got a concentric that's like 2 seconds. Like those were rough. And then the archers was like, I don't even know what the fuck, but like, underhand grip, overhand grip. Like there's so many ways to tackle that it's like, how is boredom a thing? But that's what you have to do to build that. And I think it's embarrassing that my squat and my deadlift are so close together, but we know that my deadlift is a weak point. So what am I going to be doing a lot of? Posterior chain. And my bench is amazing, which I love to bench. So yeah, I need some help with my deadlift. That doesn't mean that we're going to be doing like random single leg hopping hip extension shit that like makes no sense. I think
too, look, and you got to look at it this way. Like there are, if you take your deadlift and your back squat and your front squat, we compare those. There's kind of averages. If you're built like I fit the average. Like I don't have a long torso in relation to my legs, and I have long legs in relation to everything on me is fairly well even.
Mm-hmm.
So the standards for strength, if I look at your deadlift, we use deadlift as a mother lift. That should be, if you multiply that by 0.8, that's what your back squat should be. If you multiply that by 0.85, that's what your front squat should be. That's well balanced, but that's only well balanced in somebody who has a somatotype that's well balanced. Right. That doesn't have any glaring things. If you start looking at someone who's built different, like you're built differently, you're like a fucking Willy Wonka Oompa Loompa. Like you're short and you've got levers. You've got good levers for squatting, not so much for deadlifting. So but I was actually thinking about this a couple of weeks ago. What I may try with you now is more of an Ed Cohn style, where it's like a modified sumo, because he's kind of in that same boat and he's the GOAT of powerlifting. Well, what did he do? He did more of a shorter stance sumo, probably working really better for you because of the way you're built. So then your pull would actually go up really high. It's just finding the exercise that fits the person, and not trying to get a person to try to fit an exercise that they're not really suited for. You said the bench press. That's a good one. Yeah. Here's the thing. If I had somebody do the same back squat 6 months in a row, they would be like, it's the coaches specifically, why haven't I not done a different back squat? But God forbid you take the bench out in one fucking phase for a guy and he'll freak out. It's like, you never get bored bench pressing 3 days a week, but you're telling me you think you need like 5 different squat exercises. And if there's anything that doesn't need variation, it's your lower body.
Yeah.
Your upper body needs a lot of variation because of there's so much range of motion in the shoulders and the shoulder blades, but the hips and the femurs don't have a lot of range of motion. So you don't need a lot of variation lower body. You do need a lot of variation upper body.
Yeah. I don't think I told you, like a few weeks ago, some guy in our gym asked me to spot him on bench press, and his girlfriend was like watching, which was a little bit weird, but he had 225 on there. And I was like, all right, what are you going for? And he's like, I just want one. And he was maybe like 5'6", like 150 pounds. I'm like, all right, cool. Gets under the bar. His elbows are like all the way out and his feet do the tap dancing.
God, happy feet.
And so he got the rep, and I was like, do you mind if I just give you a tip? And he's like, no, like totally, like open for it. So I show him like how to, use your lats and like all that stuff. And he adds 10 pounds. And I was like, that's awesome. All of a sudden, like the entire gym, because our gym is like a bunch of equestrians in this town. So no one really lifts or anything. So they're like, so is that like the best way to bench or whatever? And it was like a mini seminar on bench press, because all the guys want to up their bench press weight. Yeah. And I was like, this is hilarious. You would never see this happen with back squatting or anything else. Only the bench press.
Not at least not in America. Not in America. Because I remember I remember when I was real big, I think I was 100, I was close to 270 pounds at the time. And I was still powerlifting. And I walk into my college chemistry class, and this little guy walks up to me and goes, "Hey man, how much do you bench?" And I was like, "More than you." And I sat down because and it was a dick thing to say to him, but you just get tired of hearing that. It's like, just ask. I squat deadlift really heavy. Ask me that, because that's way more impressive than my bench, especially because I'm built to deadlift.
I know some guy, like when I did the 75s, he's like, most men don't do that. And I'm like, what do I say to that? Like they should, or like, yeah, I know.
Say, yeah, I know. That's what I would say. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But it's funny because when I started traveling, like when I hooked up with Charles and started working for him and traveling, it was funny to see the perspective in different countries, because different countries prioritize different things. So if you went to Europe, a lot of people would ask you, do you clean and do snatch? How much do you clean a snatch? How much do you front squat?
Yeah.
When you come to Australia, it was a lot of like, how much do you squat? Only in America did I find that people were that obsessed about the fucking bench press.
Well, I'm glad that's my best lift then. I'll be good.
Pull-ups.
And pull-ups. Yeah. I please don't take those out. I really, really love them too much. I don't care if my back, I'm already wearing a large sports bra. I'll just stretch them out. I don't care.
The best is when you were like, "Hey bro, we're going to have to stop. We got to calm down on the back training because they're going to have to take my dress out again."
Yeah. That was like, literally, she's like, I hope these fits in a year. I'm like, yeah, me too. So getting back to like with the dieting part too, because a lot of people were always wondering what I was eating, like the 4 weeks leading up to the show, as if that's what transformed me. And I think it's getting an idea of like, how low did you know to take me, and how do you know when to bring calories up? What are you looking for in that sense?
Well, a lot of it, you got to look at how the pieces of the puzzle fit together, right? So it's like, okay, we can always keep pulling calories. As long as you have at least micronutrients, you need enough protein to then hold on to muscle tissue. You need enough carbohydrate to fuel workouts. Fat at that point doesn't really matter all that much, which is why we had your fat fairly significantly low for a while. As long as you have essential fatty acids, that's all you really need at the very end. But definitely you don't want to go low carb, because then you go to train and you train like shit. You have no energy. You absolutely don't want low protein. So I think we got to a point, I think we were 3 or 4 weeks out. And at that point you had been doing a lot of conditioning. And I was like, you know what? We're just going to pull the conditioning out, only lift weights, and we're going to bring the calories back up, because we were using a lot of the conditioning as a caloric funnel. And I was like, just keep doing your steps, because you like doing like 20 fucking thousand steps a day. I don't know. And then I think at one point I had told you you need to calm down on that. But you get to a point where you don't want to diet all the way to the event. You want to make sure that you are there a few weeks ahead, because you want to try to feed into a photo shoot, because if you don't, you're going to look stringy and gross. So the whole point is to be like, okay, let's get there as early as possible. That way we can remove all the output. If I remove that, we don't actually have to raise calories, because you've actually raised calories by reducing calories out. And then maybe we can pump the calories up a little bit, especially carbs, because if you don't have carbs for a significant period of time, anything you're not bringing in, your body's going to stop producing the enzymes needed for that, because the body's always wanting to save energy. And this is a big mistake that a lot of girls make, is they're on low carb for 6 months. They get to 6-7 days out, and then they start trying to load carbs. All the enzymes that they need to store carbs as glycogen and make them look nice and full, their body's not making it anymore, or not as much. It tones it down, because the body's like, well, I don't really need all this, so I just won't make it anymore, because that costs energy and I'm in an energy deficit. The body's like, well, how do I save energy? Let's stop making this and this and this and this. So you're better off adding carbs back in and feeding into a photo shoot, so that you can actually fill back out. And you'll go to see a lot of these girls look real stringy on stage, and then they'll start eating macas, and they'll start eating a bunch like the hamburgers and fries. They're trying to get enough sodium and fat to try to create some type of fullness. And they usually just end up spilling over and softening up, and then they can't get it off when they get on stage.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've heard you talk about that before, and like people were asking me if we did like a water load and cut and everything, and I was like, no, like we were high water, high sodium, like it wasn't
Yeah.
even like hit this, hit this. It was like just normal, which I was very grateful for. But
And
um,
that, yeah, and that sodium thing's a big one too,
yeah,
because sodium draws water to it. So if you cut sodium too early, you can manipulate some of these things, but people play with it too much when they don't know how their bodies are going to how it's going to affect their body. So
mhm,
if you pull sodium too quickly, your body's just going to respond by cranking up aldosterone. So then if you do have a little bit of sodium, you're just going to hold to a bunch of water and you're going to smooth out and not be able to get rid of that. So you want to keep water high. You want to keep sodium high. You want to have that high a few weeks out. That way you can drive cortisol and aldosterone lower. That way, when you pull the water out last minute, the water falls off. You put a little sodium back in, it pulls any of that superficial water back into the muscle where it belongs. And that way you don't have to worry about like last minute tactics of, oh shit, how do I get rid of this water? And I made the mistake. I remember I had a girl that was an IFBB pro bikini, and the WBFF told her, if you'll compete, we'll just give you a pro card and compete at Worlds, because she was really phenomenal physique.
mhm.
When I was working with her, I started playing around with a little bit of sodium, very similar to what I did with you. But what I didn't realize was she's a doctor, and so she's very anti-sodium. So the minute we gave her sodium, her body went, "Oh shit, yeah," and it just held on to that, and it ruined Worlds for her, because I didn't ask enough questions. I didn't think that she didn't eat a lot of sodium.
Yeah.
And so when we put the sodium in there, her aldosterone was sky high. So she held on to it, and I couldn't get it off fast enough. But
Oh
you learn through these mistakes. But a lot of people keep the sodium high, keep the water high. You can always pull that out, but pull it out last minute. Don't go to no sodium.
right.
Maybe you're doing like 5 or 6 grams of sodium. Maybe you're doing 4 liters of water. And then the day before, you can cut the sodium in half, cut the water in half, pump the carbs up a little bit more, and everything should fall right off of you if everything's been done correctly.
My photo shoot was on a Monday, and that Sunday you had me just do like a circuit workout. And I think I was at the gym like half an hour later, just taking pictures of myself because I was like, yo, these veins are so cool. And of course, I'm the only one who's like taking pictures. Like, God, the selfies album is like mortifying, but it's pretty cool. Like when it comes together, you know?
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah. So, and then I did a DEXA the week before, and I asked everyone on social media to guess my body fat, which was really entertaining because some people said 3%,
3%.
like, I was like, okay, are they trying to be nice or is this what they really think? Dave Lee said I was 46, which I thanked him for. But everybody pretty much guessed like between 8 and 10. And I was like, okay, maybe my photos give an illusion of that, but I think it's important that you acknowledge that a lot of people think they're lower than they really are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Especially
100%.
women. I mean, I'm sorry, they're higher than they think they are.
Yeah. Much higher. And I think I nailed it within like 0.1, didn't I?
Yep. You won.
Yeah, I won.
Yep.
But that's the thing. Like you've got a couple of things you can look at. Number one, does the body fat percentage really matter? Not really, because it matters what you look like.
Right.
My buddy Nick told me one time, you're only as lean as your fattest body part. So realistically, from a bodybuilding perspective, what that DEXA scan says doesn't really matter all that much. But it is good to have a frame of reference to have that as well. But to go back to what you said, like when I got to this last time, you saw the pictures. I still haven't really posted a lot of them in the program design group yet of how lean I got. Cause you saw what I was looking at like weekly up to that.
Mm-hmm.
Most people would have said I was 6-7% body fat. And I was like, no. Even when I was 12, 13, I'm like, no, this is 12, 13. They would have been like, that's 8-9%. Nah, because they don't understand what true body fat percentage looks like because they've never been there. Right. Or they were getting that to a point and their coach doesn't understand body fat percentage and was telling them that. Right.
Yeah.
And people hold on to fat differently too. Like I tend to hold it all around my fupa area. So I'll be shredded almost everywhere, but just subumbilical and my upper back. And I have to get down to like 6% on a DEXA for that to actually go away. So my last DEXA scan was 8.8. So for me, and all DEXAs are different too. The software is different. Like GE makes probably one of the best ones in the world. And so the last time I was really shredded, I hit 6.5. And that specific DEXA machine, because of the model and the software they use, I knew that I was probably about 11%. There's about a 5% swing on that one. So when I was actually expecting to get in the GE one and show like 6.5, and it showed me at 8.8. And I'm like, okay, all right. So that much better DEXA machine than the other one that I got on a couple of years ago.
Yeah, they're cool to compare. Because when I was 64 kilos, you told me to go get one just to, unfuck my head. So 4 kilos heavier than I was for 15% body fat, and I was only 2% more body fat. And
yeah.
4 kilos is what, 9 pounds ish?
Yeah. 8.8 pounds.
Yeah. So just to be able to compare stuff like that. I do want to touch.
That's why too, if you're going to go get DEXA done, you need to make sure you go to the same machine and make sure that they constantly recalibrate. Like the place I found near our house, they calibrate it every day. The girl that runs it is one of the people that goes around and trains people how to use the DEXA. But what's funny is when I went in, I did the DEXA and she was like, wow. I go, what? She goes, wow. I'm used to seeing people that are this lean. They're like falling asleep on the table and they're miserable. She goes, I can't believe how much energy you have. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, this is not that lean. Yeah. 8.8 on a DEXA is not that lean. But she's like, yeah, most people are dragging in, dragging out when they come here and they're like cranky and miserable. I'm like, yeah, it's because they rush shit too fast and they don't know what they're doing.
That's perfect segue, because I want to talk about like what people are supposed to expect when dieting, because we have talked about like how with the pendulum swinging is now everyone thinks if you diet for like a week and all of a sudden you feel lower energy, you have metabolic damage, you got to go to maintenance, like everyone's a delicate flower, when it depends obviously how lean you want to get. But some of the stuff like I went through, like I had very low energy, I had big diet brain, I'd put things in the freezer and then the cabinet or whatever. But like the insomnia, the metrics going to shit, stuff like that. Can you touch on that? And how long is that okay for? And how long do people endure that before it's like too late?
Yeah. So we have to separate this between fat loss versus thick skin lean fat loss, because those are two different things.
Yep.
If you're significantly overweight, you got a lot of stored energy to lose. You can eat real low calorie as long as you're taking some essential fatty acids, probably a good multivitamin, multi-mineral, maybe a little bit extra magnesium, zinc, some other things. You got plenty of food, you got plenty of energy availability in your body. So I'm going to say something that's really unpolitically correct. Fat people don't get relative energy deficiency syndrome.
No,
they don't. As long as they can tap into the energy that's available in their body. So if they have nutrient deficiencies and they can't tap into stored body fat, yeah, you might see some of that. You may see some fat loss stalls and things like that. But for the most part, if you're, say, 35% body fat, you have a ton of food on your body that you've eaten in the past. You don't really need to eat a lot of exogenous food right now. So there's not really a lower limit. That's why you see doctors put the fast 500 and like the HCG diet, and you see trainers losing their fucking minds. It's like that shit that works. Like I used to lose my mind at that. I used to get mad at clients when we do like 800 calorie HCG diet. Now I know better. And I'm like, okay, you've got a significant amount of weight to lose. You're going to get that from exogenous food you're eating now or endogenous food you ate in the past. As long as you have all of the cofactors you need to run your biochemistry, you're not in any danger of starving to death eating 800 calories. Just understand that, yeah, you're going to be tired. Your training is going to suffer, but at least you can lose weight real fast. And if the goal is to lose it really fast, and hammer it when you're fat, like go hard when you're fat, slow it down when you start getting to a normal body fat percentage. Now Now, if we go from a normal body fat percentage to getting like unhealthy lean, so looking at girls that want to get, below 15% body fat, even probably for a lot of women below 16, 17, you're starting to get to that level. Like getting to 20% is pretty easy. Starting to get towards 16 becomes a bit harder. Now, getting stage ready from 16 to say 10 to 11%, that's real fucking hard. And a lot of these guidelines that I teach publicly, they have to be changed, because you have to understand that your body does not want to be there if that is your desire, or you're doing it for show or shoot or something like that. Just understand that some of these, your metrics are going to go to shit. You're going to get insomnia. Your hair may start falling out. You may lose your period. You want to try to delay at that as much as possible, but no one's going to get the 9, 10, 11% as a female without dealing with that. No guy is going to get to 3 to 6% body fat without losing his libido, losing the ability to get a strong heart erection, having his testosterone go to shit. It's just not going to happen. So I would say that if you are going to that level that you want to get super lean, you don't want to rush that for sure, because you're getting at a position where you are going to be susceptible to losing a lot of fat-free mass, and that's what you're trying not to do. It's inevitable that you will, which is why we had the conversation of the day where you were like, I want to push it and get freaky lean. Like, I want to get real fucking go to unhealthy levels. I'm like, that's cool. Just understand that we have to start with a bit more body weight, because you're going to have to sacrifice some lean tissue. There's no other way around it, unless you're willing to take, a grocery list of gear. And that stuff is amazing. If people want to take, guys want to get on like a gram of fucking test, and they want to get on trend, they want to get on Winchester, they want to growth, they want to get on pets, they want to get on all the shit. That stuff will help, and it'll help keep you from losing all that tissue, but you're still going to lose some. There's no other way. If you want to peel that last little bit off and have veins on your ass cheeks, okay, you got to understand that, that you're going to have some consequences of that. So it's the same process, but a different ball game than going from fat to unfat, and going from unfat to no fat.
And I did say that, and I do want to go there. And I've been on a TRT for almost a year, which I think has helped with my recovery and ability to train as hard as I do. And you and I have very similar viewpoints on using PEDs or steroids and stuff, because we both coach people who have used it and stuff. And I mean, I don't judge anybody who wants to use it. I do think that they can be very helpful and all that. But when it comes to like getting freaky lean, so I've experienced some of the insomnia, lost my period, stuff like that. It all came back. And going into this next step, we're going to gain weight. Cause I've said on social, like, our plan now, put on a little bit of size, do another photo shoot, which is a reason why I like photo shoots, because you have to go slow. So there's no hard date. I'm not like, hey, Luke, I want to do a show in July, and then we only have X amount of months to get ready. You sacrifice more lean tissue. So at least people made fun of me for moving the shoot so many times, but listen, you want to do it when you're ready and when you're in a good place. So I guess if you can kind of talk about what can I expect now, trying to go to this next level over the next however many months we're going to, spend. Because I don't care, like, if we do this for 6 months, if we do it for another year, like however long it takes.
So now the thing now is to gain weight, stabilize the weight, and basically bring that maintenance level of total daily energy expenditure up. And so the big thing is you do a photo shoot, you start to eat, you gain 2.5 kilos. It's like, oh shit. It's like, okay, well, that's normal, because you got more poo in your body now. You're storing more glycogen, your stress hormones are down. This is all totally normal stuff. Now it's like, okay, when that levels off, okay, how much do we need to gain? How long is this going to take? Right. And how much is too much? Right. So we bring that up, and then we start chipping it down again. And the process this time should actually be easier for you to get from the new high body weight to where or the body fat percentage that you just got to should be a lot easier. And you shouldn't have a lot of those effects. But then going lower, now it's like, okay, I know what happened last time when I got down to that level. Now to get another couple of percentage of body fat off, we're going to have to go a little bit longer. So, if I dealt with that for 3 or 4 weeks where I was completely fucked, okay, now you may have to do this for like 10 to 12 weeks, but that's the only real difference is it's just the time span.
Yeah.
And then if it starts to get too bad, it's like, okay, now we need to, let's diet break, go back up a little bit, and then jump back down into it. Give you a mental break for a couple of weeks, and then, okay, we got to hammer it again. But a lot of it too is, this is where cardio now becomes a really good tool, because before you got the leveliness you're on with very little cardio, at least the last, say, 4 to 6 weeks. Now, when we go down to, say, let's say we go down to 1,300, maybe we have to go down 1,000 calories, whatever, at that point, okay, now we have to create another caloric funnel somewhere. So we're going to leverage some cardiovascular activity. So at this point, we're going to do if you're doing 20,000 steps, you can't do more steps. You can't walk all day, but now we're starting to slowly add in a bit more, walking faster, walking much faster, or, getting on a bike and going a little bit harder. And that's where like heart rate training comes into play is, well, how high do we need to get the heart rate to maximize fat oxidation without causing too much fatigue? So there's a balance there as well. But this time should be a lot easier. The more muscle you have going into it, the lot easier it's going to be.
I'm like, okay, that's part of like this whole build process, because I did freak out this week because I was like, dude, like we didn't really increase the calories that much. But then you explain, my training volume is also a lot lower. And this also happened right after the wedding. Like, why would I not expect, coming out of something where I was extremely depleted, to not gain a few kilos? Like, what would I tell a client? Oh yeah, just the same thing. And I actually started enjoying like the walking faster. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm going on little jogs. And I actually really, because in Florida, it's like amazing during the winter. So I was enjoying doing those jogs. I just don't recommend like building a course and releasing it at the same time going through this, because it got a little hairy during a week. And I like maybe forgot to tell you that little minor detail.
I found that out a couple of weeks after it was going on. I was like, what is happening here? Tell me what's going on. Oh my God. Oh, my business mentors, they're just cracking the whip. I got to get these modules out. I'm like, I should have known that. But
encourage you guys to like communicate with your coach and stuff. But I was like, I can do everything. I can do this. I swear. Like, I'm not going to succumb to, not be. And I'm like, fuck, I can't get up any earlier than 5 o'clock. But I think it's important, like, for people to realize what exactly goes into it and the time commitment and everything, because they'll say, hey, I want to get lean, or, maybe they want to get as lean as you and I have gotten. But when you learn what it takes to actually get there, it's a whole different story, because it is a big commitment. Because there were times where I had to go to seminars or whatever and go out to dinner, and you're at a steakhouse and I'm like, can I have the ahi tuna on lettuce with no dressing? Like, you really have to be anal about food.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things. I've had this conversation a lot in the last few weeks with people. Like, the biggest thing you're going to have to learn if you really want to get to your goals is how to say no. Not just no to other people, but also no to yourself. Because saying yes too much is what got you in the position you were before. You have to learn that it's okay to go out with your friends and order the ahi tuna and lettuce and a club soda, and not get a couple of glasses of wine and get a burger. You just, that's the thing. Like, if you're not willing to do that, then you either don't really want to get to your goal of getting epically lean, or you just don't need to go out. Just become a social hermit. Back in the day when we got ready for bodybuilding shows, you knew that your friend was getting ready because you wouldn't hear from him for 4 months.
Right. Yeah.
So you'd be like, bro, where have you been? It's like, oh, I competed this weekend. Oh, that's why I haven't seen you in 3 or 4 months. Okay. You just didn't leave your house. I'm like, that's smart. That's a good strategy for that, because then you remove all temptation.
Yeah. Cause that's the hardest thing. And like, I don't know. I guess giving 0 fucks helps, but like, when you're out with people, I did a post about this the other day, because I have to put myself in some clients' shoes who have a circle of friends that have never really gone to the gym. And I have to warn them, listen, when you decide you want to commit to weight training and changing your diet, you're going to be made fun of. You're going to be ridiculed. Yeah. You're going to be shamed. People are going to be like, come on, you can have 1 drink. And truth is, yes, you can have whatever you want. But it's not that one drink won't fuck up everything. It's one drink will mind fuck you and then send you in a spiral and make you feel like you failed and can set you up for that to mess everything up.
Yeah. And a lot of people cannot, they have very little willpower over hedonistic impulse desires. It's like when I'm January 1st, I said, okay, by my birthday, and you can confirm this, I'm not full of shit. I told everybody I'm going to be 10% by my birthday, and I'm going to be 90 kilos, because on paper, that's what I'd actually written out to do. And I ended up at 95 kilos at 10%. But the whole thing was, I know that because of my ADD, I have a real problem with impulse stuff. So the whole process, I was like, I'm not drinking until then. No booze in the house, no candy in the house, nothing but what I'm letting myself eat. And I stuck to that. And in 50 something days or whatever it was, 60 days, that's what you hit the goal. But that's what's going to have to happen. Like, if you want it that bad enough, you're going to have to say, okay, this is temporary. Okay. I've got a beginning and an end to this phase of what I'm doing. And then I'm going to save up all the celebration for after that. But you either all in or you're all out. That's the way I am. So I can't be the person that can go out with friends because I'm going to order a hamburger and fries. Like, I'm going to do it. I can't not do it. I don't have the willpower. So it's like, I'd just rather not go out, or I'd rather not keep things in the house that are going to tempt me like they have the last 3 weeks. And I've been eating all kinds of shit I'm not supposed to eat. But it's like, do you have to do that to lose fat? No, you can use a lot of flexibility. If you can control your impulses, you can have stuff in the house, because, if you just want to lose a little fat, you can do whatever you want. If you have specific goals and you have a time frame and you want to get to a point that's super physiologically not what your body wants to do, you need precision, accuracy, and you're going to have some discipline. Say no, and you're going to have to be really fucking hard on yourself to get there. But that's why so few people can do photo shoots and so few people can get on stage. They just don't want it bad enough. They don't have an intrinsic motivator that's going to drive them to this. So then when there's an extrinsic derailment because your friends are going to sabotage you, or an environment's going to sabotage you, if that's the case, then don't put yourself in those positions. I used to have people, I was training people, morbidly obese people. Like, I had a guy that was 660 pounds.
Wow.
His mom was a massive enabler. So he lost, I think the first 3 months, I had him down like 575, 580. Christmas hit, blew back up to 660. I'm like, what happened? Well, I had to have a talk with his mom. Like, if you want your son, my whole job was to get him small enough to get bariatric surgery, because they didn't feel comfortable putting someone that big under general anesthesia. And I said, if you really want to save your son's life, you have to not keep the stuff in the house. Oh, but he likes it. I'm like, I know. He also likes living, and he wants to get it. So stop enabling him and help him get through this. It's temporary. All we need to do is get a couple 100 pounds off. Then he gets lap band, and we're sweet. And I ended up just firing him because he wasn't in a great environment for it, and he didn't want it bad enough. He wanted to play World of Warcraft all day and drink, liters of Red Faction Mountain Dew and eat ding dongs and Twinkies and shit. But, that's the thing. People, if you want it bad enough, and if it's that important to you, you'll understand that 2 or 3 months will go by so fast, and then you'll be so glad that you did it. All your friends will be jealous as fuck because you'll look amazing. And then maintaining that is so much easier. Getting there is the hard part. Maintaining it is super easy.
Oh my God. Yeah. Getting through like the period where you raised my calories 4 years ago, getting through all that bullshit. It's like, damn, if I never went through that, I'd still be in that vicious cycle, spinning my wheels. And now it's like all about, okay, yeah, I want bad enough to look a certain way, which maybe someone doesn't understand. That's fine. It's not for them to understand. Like, this is what I want to do. And I'm with you with keeping shit in the house. Like, Charlie's like, so just because you can't trust yourself around it, I can't have it. I'm like, no, we can't have it in the house. Sorry. you're going to have to go without having certain things. Or I've told people wrap it in tin foil and then like put it away somewhere. I had to do that with our wedding cake because our wedding cake is made of that protein cookie dough fake stuff that I love. I wrapped it in 10 sheets of tin foil, put it in the back of the freezer. I was like, I need to make this bulletproof so I don't claw and poke open the holes and try to pick at it. And I tell people, I tell clients this, I'm like, you're not the only one who will go off the deep end if you're exposed to a certain food. And I think the hardest is people with kids. Like if you have kids that like certain things and that's around you all the time, like, I don't know how they do that, but
well, that's the biggest thing you get with parents. They're like, I promise I'm following the program. And then you find out from the other parent, well, when the kids don't finish all the chicken nuggets, they eat the rest of the chicken nuggets. I'm like, okay, but that wasn't in your tracking. Oh, I was just a couple of bites and they end up eating like 6 chicken fingers. It's like, no. You just ate like 400 calories that we're not. So they're like, I'm only eating 1,300 calories. I don't know. I'm not losing weight. No. You're eating 1,800 calories and you're not training that hard. You're training 3 hours a week and you've got like 5,000 steps a day. Like this is not this energy. We got to talk about energy balance and the reality of, the mathematics of all this stuff.
Yeah. So it's and hopefully like it's eye-opening that you guys, if you want to drop body fat, there are steps you have to take to look in the mirror and say, do you want it bad enough? Or would you rather celebrate Wine Wednesday, Pizza Friday, Taco Tuesday, like all that stuff? You can give it up for a little bit and then it can come back into your life and it's a lot easier to maintain. Yeah. You can have all that stuff. So last thing I want to cover is.
Well, wait, I do want to say too that, we get it. There are, because this is stuff you're not supposed to talk about anymore because everybody's got trauma and psychological. I totally get that. And if that's the case, you don't need a trainer. You need to go talk to a counselor and get your shit sorted. And then, don't worry too much about the weight loss. Just get healthy, exercise, do all that stuff that you're supposed to do. If you're falling off the rails, get a counselor, learn to work through that, go to a dietitian, nutritionist that can help you, that specializes in those types of disordered eating things. So there are people like that, but look, let's be honest, for fucking the vast majority of people, they just have a hard time saying no. You don't have if you're going out with the girls every fucking Thursday night and you're drinking 4 margaritas, a bowl of queso all to yourself, a whole thing of fajitas, and then some fucking tres leches cake. This isn't probably not a trauma thing. It's a social thing. And for the vast majority of people, if you're significantly overweight, you're morbidly obese, and this has been a problem for a long time, and it's a trauma thing, cool, get help. But if you're the normal clients we get, where it's like you're just sabotaging yourself because you can't say no at a social gathering, that's a whole completely different ballgame. Learn to say no and learn how to control your impulses, or just be fine with the way you look and just get strong and get fit and just be happy with yourself.
That's a huge thing, is learning to stay and being okay with other people's reactions, because it's not for you to manage. It most likely is them being jealous or insecure that they can't do what you're doing and that you're changing and blah, blah, blah. Like that show, like your former client, My 600-Pound Life. I have coaches watch that because I'm like, see how every person on that show has had some sort of psychological childhood trauma that they're dealing with. And that's how they get there. Because that takes work to get up to that, like there's something wrong. So people usually don't tie those in. That's a conversation I have a lot with guys with erection issues or sexual function issues, like in their 20s and stuff. I'm like, so what was your first relationship like? And they're like, well, I was 14 and, I got nervous. I couldn't get a boner. And I'm like, what happened? And when you're 14, the girl's not going to be like understanding and talk you through it. So they don't connect that as maybe causing performance issues when they're older. So of course, people aren't going to think, oh yeah, what happened as a kid is like affecting my food, relationship.
There's so much that happens to us in those really fragile times. It's like, God, thank God this never happened to me. But if it's happened to you, God, that sucks. Because, you're 14 And that happens. And the next thing you know, you go to school on Monday and you're known as Timmy Floppy Dick. Right?
Yeah.
And then, and that's all you think of. So every time you try to be intimate with somebody, you're like, oh, we're going to Timmy Floppy Dick, and you can't get a fucking erection.
Yeah. And then you carry that like the rest of your life. Or, something as simple as like being told to clean your plate all the time when you're a kid.
That's a big one.
That is a huge one. Because then it's like anything that you're given, even for free. Well, if it's free, then you have to clean your plate. Like that just go, So
I had that conversation with somebody the other day about like growing up in Texas, and you're expected to play high school football. Even it doesn't matter, especially in a small town. Like my town was like Friday Night Lights. All 7,000 people in town would be watching the football game every Friday night. And so your parents would just feed you, and you were expected to eat 2 or 3 plates of food, and you're expected, if it goes on a plate, it goes in your mouth. And then when you get out of high school and you're not playing anymore, a lot of people keep eating like that, and they wake up a few years later and they put on 30, 40, 50 pounds. And now they've got this whole process of, if it goes on the plate, I have to eat it. So they go out to eat and they always clean their plate off. They never leave anything. And that is a big American thing.
Buffets, like, dude, if you think about the price of a meal and then you compare it to like a buffet. So like at Disney, they have tons of buffets. They don't call it all you can eat anymore. They call it all you care to enjoy, to be politically correct. And I'm like, okay. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Swear to God. And I was like, but it's like that impulse, like, oh, if it's all you can eat, then I'm just going to like go to town. And it's like,
yeah,
how uncomfortable is that? Like stuffing yourself to a point where
I do miss that though. Going to a good American buffet and just paying like $12 and just eating 5 or 6 plates of food and being sick.
I mean, maybe if you're like going to go Vegas. Lay down. I did that. Well, I did that in Vegas because we paid $90 because that was the only place I could diet, because they had like plain turkey with salad.
All you can eat turkey and salad.
And I was like, woohoo. And Charlie's like, they have ice cream. It's like little shots of ice cream. I'm like, it's okay. You can have it. I'll watch. But then you watch around you and you're like, yo, stacking up on like crab legs and everything. And I'm like, damn, it is hard.
Where's Charlie? He's over on the soft serve, just like, just pouring it right in his mouth.
He totally would, because it's free, take it because you can sample size. But speaking of health, so talk a little bit about the hypertension course that you have. Is that just for Fit Pros or is it for everybody?
No, we actually, most of our courses are obviously for Fit Pros, but they're at a level that anybody could take. But I wanted to go a different direction with this. I actually wrote it for the general public. So I'm speaking to the general public, but then every once in a while I'll say, hey, also for you trainers. So we actually targeted it for general public, but also trainers will want to get it. So I'm trying to figure out how do I get like normal people that aren't trainers to actually buy the course, instead of just hoping your trainer will buy it and then relay the information. So the whole thing has been written about, hey, if your doctor's been giving you this medication, this is what it does. These are some things you need to talk to your doctor about. Sometimes you might need more than one medication. If your doctor puts you on these 2 medications at the same time, you need to talk to another doctor, because you definitely don't want to do that. So it's a lot of that. And like, hey, these are supplements that help rectify some of the nutrient deficiencies and the side effects of this. Talk to your doctor and see if they're okay with you taking this with that. So it's a lot of that stuff. And then like a lot of the training and the nutrition we've done of like, okay, these are what will raise your blood pressure if you train like this. So we've actually put templates in there and structure so that even if you're a general public and you don't have a trainer and you're like, I actually don't know what to do, we have a whole program. All you have to do is follow the instructions. So lift like this. Here's your templates. Here's your conditioning. Here's the way I want you to eat. This is how I want you to monitor it on Chronometer or MyFitnessPal or whatever. So anybody can do this one. And I actually had to cut with Zoe. Zoe and I did a one together. We did the pharmaceutical one because she's done pharmacology 1 and 2 in university. She knows way more about that than I do. Like it's stuff that I would have to look up. She can just rattle off the top of her head. It's so bad that when she first started, she started talking and I went, because because she's been in school forever now. And I'm like, all I think about is how much money she's spending on university. And then I'm like, wow, that was money well spent. Holy shit, my wife is brilliant.
That's awesome.
Started the lecture off talking to coaches, and I'm like, no. Remember, we're talking to normal people, not coaches. Like we're talking to their clients and them too. So let's keep it on the level.
What are like a couple stats that you realized like researching for this or putting it together that you're like, holy shit, people need to know this?
Oh man, like one of the things that really blew my mind was that over 50% of people who are prescribed hypertensive drugs either never fill them out or stop taking them. Yeah. And so from what I gather, doctors they're not scaring clients enough. They're not scaring patients enough. They're like, if you get cancer, you start crying in the you freak the fuck out, right? Even if it's a cancer that's not, and I'm not saying that there's some cancers not a big deal, but there are some cancers you get where it's like, okay, so that's got a 90% chance of, you get something that has like my father ended up dying of multiple myeloma. Like you get that, especially stage 4 where he was at, you're done. Like there's not a whole lot you got. You're not a whole lot you can do except try to manage it and try to live as good as you can. But if you get that, or if somebody says, hey, you've got 98% blockage in your arteries, like you're going to freak the fuck out. But if you say, hey, hypertension is basically the number one risk factor for almost every single non-communicable disease, in the top 10 things that are going to kill you. If you tell somebody that, they're going to freak out. But the doctors aren't doing that. They're like, oh, your blood pressure's a little high. You need to get that down. Here's the medication. So they give them the medication, but they don't fill it out because maybe they can't afford it, or maybe they just don't think it's a big deal. They're like, oh, it's not as bad as acid reflux. It's that type of thing. The second thing is the side effects for a lot of them are really bad. Nausea, losing boner, losing your sex drive. There's a lot of head fog, fatigue. And so a lot of people will do their first round and they give up after a week because the side effects are so bad. So that actually blew my mind, that, it is a massively underdiagnosed and massively mismanaged pathology for a lot of people. And they need to understand that that's the check engine light, that you are going to progress to something way more heinous if you don't take care of this now. And then, doctors they're not taught what to do with the lifestyle and the training, but neither are coaches, which is why we wanted to bring this out. It's like, there are some things you do and don't want to do. And there's some like really, really weird things. Like you've heard me talk about this before, like the one piece of equipment, if you've got really high blood pressure that you don't want to do, leg press. Okay. But it gets even deeper than that. Whereas if you've got high blood pressure, you probably want to do more isolation work, probably more machine type work, unilateral work. Really blew my mind too about rest periods. So what they showed in a lot of the research was, if you're not taking significant enough rest periods, every set after the first set, your blood pressure progressively climbs and stays elevated.
Wow.
So now I'm kind of thinking, well, we get more unilateral work, great time for more structural work, lower trap raises and split squats and things like that. But also thinking, okay, maybe it might be better to have complete rest periods and not too huffy puffy.
Right.
A lot of stuff like that. Yeah.
Wow. That I think you guys, first of all, I would hope that if you tell a man, yo, you're going to lose your boner, that would be just as scary as you're going to die. So maybe not, but
it's funny. Well, no. Well, here's the thing. Like I remember Charles Poliquin telling us one time, if you can't get a solid boner, that's like a heart attack for your dick. So that's that for a lot of people. If you've got like high hip to waist ratio, you've got metabolic syndrome, you've got some of these other things going on, you start losing your boner. That's a good indicator that your cardiovascular system is not functioning well. But here's the problem. Go to a doctor goes, oh, here's some Cialis. Like, they don't say, hey man, let's go get a scan. Let's look at your labs. Okay. You got high cholesterol. Let's look at your blood pressure really high. Okay. Maybe just go exercise and eat better. It's like, what the fuck does that mean? Like
we have a pill for that.
most trainers don't know how to train correctly. So you think that that patient's going to understand what they're supposed to go do. So that then the patient goes, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I'll go find a coach. They go to some bodybuilder bro coach who puts them on the leg press or screaming at them and doing drop sets and adds bands on the machine. And then the guy gets a fucking widowmaker.
And you guys said on a different podcast, what does the blood pressure get up to when they're on something like a leg press?
Oh man, they did. There was a study in 1985. I can't remember the name of the study, but they compared the leg press, bilateral leg press, with single arm dumbbell curl, and they found that the dumbbell curls would raise people's blood pressure into the high 200s, but the leg press raised it into, what was it, Zoe? 400s? What was it? What was the first number? 480. Yeah, 480 over 350 in one of the guys. And those are in people with normal blood pressure. So here's the thing. If you've got normal blood pressure and it's raising that high, that's fine, because that's going to happen. And that's probably a good thing that it conditions the arteries. But if you're walking around at like 180 over 100, and then you say, well, I'm going to get on this leg press, that you already have arteries that are starting to harden. If they weren't, they'd be able to expand. So if they can't expand, blood pressure is going to go up. So you're already walking around with stage 2 hypertension. Then you get on a leg press and it goes up, what, 300-400%. And you do this repeatedly over time, everything's going to get harder and harder. Your blood pressure is going to keep climbing up. And transient increases in blood pressure, not that big of a deal. So I want people to understand too, you want to lift weights. That's a good thing. It's the constant it's the constant increased vascular resistance around the clock that's going to cause the damage, which is also another point we put in there. You want to take your blood pressure. Let's say you take it in the afternoon. If you see that that's high, probably the 2 best times to take it is first thing in the morning before you go to bed. Because even if you have high blood pressure or higher, like stage 1, maybe even dipping into stage 2, in the middle of the day, because you have work stress and all that, you definitely want your blood pressure to be normal, or as normal as possible, before bed and when you get up, because you don't want high blood pressure when you're asleep. That's really bad, because that's constant high blood pressure that's going to constantly damage the endothelial lining, which is going to constantly create a situation where the endothelial cells can't produce the chemicals they need to create vasodilation. And then so you start to get hardened arteries.
So what would be a good blood pressure nowadays?
So I would say, and if you want to be under 120 over 80, that's what you want. Mm-hmm. Hold on. Pablo. Goddamn chihuahuas. He's making my blood pressure go. But like, it's normal to have slightly high in the morning. Mm-hmm. And it's normal to have it a little bit elevated in the afternoon. Like, but if you can keep that, under 120 over 80, you're doing pretty good. But if people are doing like medications for ADD and coffee and work stress, your blood pressure, don't freak out if your blood pressure is 135 over 90 in the middle of the afternoon. Just make sure you're taking it at home when you're in a relaxed position, because you definitely want to make sure that it's normalized in a relaxed situation.
And do you still recommend
if you're relaxed and it's high, you got a problem.
Yeah. Because people get nervous if they go to the doctor and, it's high. It could be like a false reading. Is the one that I was going to say Omron, it's Omron, right? That we have.
I like the Omron Evolve. Yeah.
So you can get that on Amazon, I think, or like a drugstore. You just, people don't know that you could actually do it at home, like with your own cuff and Bluetooth and stuff like that. Yeah.
You can go to Walgreens, CVS, you get, I think it's $70-$80. The Omron Evolve, I think it's HEM 7500. I think is what it is. That's the one that's black. It's just a cuff. Yeah. So we're beyond the days where you need a little machine with a tube and the thing. You just put the cuff on, sit in a relaxed position for 5 or 10 minutes. You want to make sure that your arm is supported, and you want to make sure that the blood pressure cuff is at the same level as your heart. And then you also want to make sure, I don't have my cuff on me, but make sure that when you bend your elbow, that the cuff is pretty much touching your forearm. And you just sit there and hang out. Don't get on Facebook and start arguing with people. Just stay calm and then hit the button. Boom, you're good. That's it. That's all you got to do. Super simple.
I remember in college when people, I don't know if it was like the YMCA test or whatever, where we had to do like blood pressure with the squeezy thing tube and have to remember
Yeah.
like what you bring it up to, and it's higher during exercise. Ugh. Yo,
I can
can't be
never say
easier.
if the
Sphygmomanometer.
sphinctergometer
Yes.
blood
Oh my
pressure cuff.
God. Yeah. Why can't we just call it that? So when will the course be out?
We're hoping in maybe 2 weeks. I think 2 weeks is always finishing up the edits on the videos, cleaning up the slides, making sure the slides look nice. Yeah, so we're almost there. We're almost there. We'll probably do a pre-sale maybe in a week, maybe a week, 2 weeks. We'll do the pre-sale. You've got, I think we've got over 12 hours of content, 12 to 14 hours of it.
Awesome.
So yeah,
And
I go
is
some pretty good rants.
is it, of course, it wouldn't be a good course without those, neither a podcast either. So is there a list that people need to get on, or they just find that on your website or social media? Or
Yeah,
what?
we'll make an announcement. We'll make an announcement on all the social media stuff for show. And then we'll have it. You basically just go to the website and you can just buy it, and you got instant access, and that's your material, not your material. It's our material, but you're have it for the rest of your life to study it. So, and then there'll be a forum as well. So if there's any questions people have and all that, then I'll have a forum. And then the next one, we've got a couple other things to do, but we're going to do one on heart disease as well. So we're going to say, okay, here's hypertension. That's one part of this. It's the big risk factor. Now we're going to go into actual heart disease to teach people. We'll teach the more in depth of like what the cardiovascular system is. We'll get into like all the structures and elements of what's actually happening, what your cholesterol means. We'll go into cholesterol medications. So we did the hypertension, then we'll go to cholesterol stuff and metabolic syndrome. And that'll kind of be the first foundational one we'll do. And then for us nerds that really want to get deep, we'll have another level where it really goes into like biochemistry and like all the hormones and shit, baroreceptors, and going to nitric oxide and all that stuff.
I'll tell you what, I think the forum alone will be worth the price of admission of that course. Cause it's not like you just give like a 4-sentence answer. Like Luke will sometimes film a video to provide an answer, or if the ADD drugs kick in the morning and you're lucky to ask in the morning, you'll get like a 9-paragraph novel, and he'll very detailed answer. And there's always a lot of discussion. So I think sometimes people are hesitant to join forums because they're like, well, no one answers the questions, but you guys actually do. So
As long as people are asking questions, we're going to answer. I will say this, just like all of our other courses, these are rated R. So if words hurt you, this is not going to be if you don't like hearing people say shit, fuck, really unpolitically correct stuff, this is not the course for you, because don't buy it and then ask for a refund because I say fuck a lot. Just go into it. I didn't bleep anything out. My videographer's like, do you want me to bleep those out? I'm like, fuck no. Like, no. If they can't handle that word, if that word offends them, then they don't need to go to our courses. And I have to say this too, because there's another educator that wanted to do stuff with us. And he was like, here's some of my courses. Look at my stuff. Can I see your nutrition course? So we sent it to him. And he goes, oh, I don't know if this is going to work out because, man, you cussed a lot. In my nutrition course, I might have said 3 cuss words.
Yeah.
He goes, there are people who are sensitive to words. I'm like, yeah, that's not my demographic. That's not the people that come to our courses. So,
yeah. I don't think you have to worry about anyone listening to me on a podcast with you is probably like craving more swear words and vulgarity and transparency. They've been pretty forewarned, and people do allude to the fact that they enjoy honesty, sometimes brutal honesty, because that's like the people that you want around you are the ones who appreciate you for you. Because we're not gonna fucking change who we fucking are.
What's so funny? Because like. I'm sorry, that's just how I talk. That's how I've always talked. I'm from Texas. That's how we talk. Like,
yeah, like you were in Varsity Blues. I mean,
yeah,
you're like the OG. Yeah, he really was though. Like you were.
Yeah.
Stunt
man. I'm a stunt man.
You have to post that picture. Maybe I'll use that photo for the podcast. People will be like, what?
You know what really kills me though? After Varsity Blues, they did Any Given Sunday, and they were trying to find me, and I had moved from Austin to Dallas. No one could contact me. So I would have done stunts in any given Sunday too, but no one contacted. That was
I
back in
love
the day
that.
when barely any of us had cell phones and there was no Facebook.
I know. Isn't that so weird to think like, yeah, no one could find me. Like nowadays, like, oh, milliseconds, you could find somebody.
Now it's I can't keep people from finding me.
Yeah. We know where you are now. Well, thank you for coming back as always. I'm sure people will thoroughly enjoy this because over 2 hours flew by. So people can find you at Luke Leaman for all the memes on Instagram.
Yeah.
And then
Do not go to Instagram. Do not go to Luke Leaman and ask me muscle nerd shit. I will just ignore you. Just if you want like memes and dirty shit, then that's go to muscle nerds _health for the muscle nerd stuff. Come to me for the dirty, nasty shit.
I have like 4 people that I can send the most offensive memes to on Instagram. You're one of them.
Yeah. Oh man. People are like, man, I can't believe you posted that. I'm like, you should see what I don't post.
Oh my God. Yeah. You should see what we send each other in like our circle of 4 people that people would be like, oh my God, like stuff that we're like, you should make that a slide. No, you should make that a slide.
Yeah,
who's going to do it first?
I'm like, ooh, I'm not touching it. I'm not jumping on that grenade. That's even too far for me.
Yeah. But you can do it at your own seminars. You can do whatever the fuck you want, really.
Yeah. There are, you see this, there are some slides that I put on the thing that don't actually make it into the student slides because I'm like, yeah, I don't want you having that associated with mine. It's funny in the seminar. It's not so funny if you show somebody and it gets taken out of context.
Yeah, 100%. We can't be held against us for stuff that we might have said when maybe we were not coherent, but who knows? All right.
I blame the Vivance.
Yes, exactly. We're ADD. That's our excuse. It always will be. So thank you everybody for listening and we will talk to you soon.